what are the opportunities that we've seen? Okay, we've talked about the challenges, but I like to always have the glass half full. But what is the upside to what's happened only in 8 weeks? People have been forced to make sudden changes that they said could never happen before.
The smaller businesses in accounting practices and even up to mid-tier are typically not as high rate adopters, I guess, of a lot of cloud software and ability to operate and be more efficient. And so from a business perspective for us, there's an interesting almost a brand messaging piece that you can flip around, trying to actually encourage, based on the fact that we all have to operate this way at the moment anyhow, for a totally different messaging on how you can develop a business. So that's, if you broaden that out from just the business that I've joined, there's a lot of opportunity there for that word that keeps coming up, pivoting, messaging, and how it can actually be deployed. For me, what's interesting is it's been challenging my mindset around what I've always been sort of through mentors, and my last experience, it was very much a focus on less structured, flexible working arrangements. So we had a really focused attention on face-to-face time, just as we grew, and we grew rapidly. So that was our sort of company motto. And I think you can't stick to those mottos anymore. And so there's a lot more opportunity around who you can actually reach in your teams. They're very sort of low-level hanging sort of fruit pieces that I'm seeing, but they're starting to trigger me even to challenge my adopted thinking to date, which means that there's opportunity in that as well. Yeah. What you can change in business.
Yeah, there's some great messages out on social media at the moment. I don't know if you've seen the one around who drove your digital transformation, and there's 3 boxes: the CEO, the CFO, or COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I know Henrik and I have had a conversation in the studio about exactly that. So yeah, there's some interesting times.
Do you know, Paula, one thing that I exchanged with you over email about this conversation was that one thing that this has done for me as a working mum with 3 small, actually not that small children now, and actually COVID-19 has actually made me realise that. But one thing that I found about this is seeing how the kids have adopted to using the technology, and seeing how they're all on Zoom and how they're socialising with their friends, and they're doing their schoolwork, etc. It's actually empowered me about my mind and my thinking about what my next job could be, because I realised that there's ways for me to stay connected with my mum, or with my kids as a mum, through technology, that perhaps I would have been the one that felt the face-to-face had to be an imperative, which perhaps placed barriers in the way in which I could do the roles that I do. And I think that's been one thing that's been quite empowering for me, as I kind of, as I pivot and I think about what's my next role going to look like. Well, you know what? More travel, location, things that weren't on the table before as a working mum. For me, I feel I can put them on and I can still have that connection. And but I had to see the kids using it to almost get the permission to feel that we can do this as a family, and just to think about doing things differently.
Yeah, and I think it makes a good point. And Sue and I were literally talking this morning on another conversation about that mindset. I mean, I think all of us, certainly in this community, have got growth mindset. So we're not closed thinking, but still we're actually finding ourselves going, oh my God, I thought that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
We're constantly being challenged at the moment, aren't we? With new ways of doing things and new thinking. And that's what's interesting. Some of these things make our lives easier, and we go, that's great, that's an opportunity to adopt something moving forward. And other things, I think, will actually make us realize the things that we were taking for granted that we really appreciate. The pieces, it's fantastic, the flexibility about working from home and location and time zones and all those things. But there's also the pieces about how nice it is to be in a room with somebody and to pick up on the nuances of body language and actually physical energy. So I think it will be a really interesting recalibration. There'll be part of us wanting to rush out and be with people, be amongst people. And then also maybe there'll be an appreciation that there's a piece you can do by stepping back and working remotely. And of course, working remotely, when that's, people, when you're doing it to work at home and do something in a focused manner, it's very different to working remotely and, you know, homeschooling 3 kids, or having everybody in your space, you know, suddenly sharing. So I work at home quite often anyway, but if I have to share this space, you know, it's quite a large home study. And if my husband decides to work from home as well, that's no longer such a pretty picture. These conversations, you know, are more challenging. And I was working with a client yesterday, and in our session, you know, three interruptions. She'd gone in a separate room and closed the door, and 3 interruptions from kids. So there's this balancing of appreciating what we had and maybe we were taking for granted, but also an appreciation of the things that might open up some new doors for us that we had never thought to open those doors.